I can't tell you how much I love it when you, my viewers, do my work for me. I can just sit back and eat corn checks while you guys find the false friends. One D. Johnson of British Columbia. No, that's too obvious. Let's try Don J. Discovered today's false friend in the King James Version. He was doing a topic study in my beloved Logos Bible software, and he came across the word Fray. So he looked all three of the uses of Fray in the King James Version up, and this is what he wrote me. The first two references, I think one could figure out the meaning from context. But the Zechariah 1:21 reference might be a little tougher. Not sure if you've noticed that one before. Well, Don J, I had not. So I took a look, and you absolutely nailed it in every respect. And although I happen to know that you were already a good Bible reader before I was born, the method of your analysis heartens me. I do see my fingerprints on it, if I may be so bold. This makes me think maybe I'm doing something good for the church, not just in my conclusions, but in my methods. So let's try those methods. But first, you YouTube viewers need to play along. Please, please play along. Pause the video now and comment. What do you think Fray means in Zechariah 1:21? Then said I, what come these to do? And he spake, saying, These are the horns which have scattered Judah, so that no man did lift up his head. But these are come to fray them, to cast out the horns of the Gentiles, which lifted up their horn over the land of Judah to scatter it. I'll wait. It helps me a ton to know what you're thinking. What does the word fray mean? Still waiting? Good, thanks. No, just kidding, still waiting. Okay, now you've written your comment, and we can proceed. First, notice a possible false friend either through contextual conflict or through the use of other translations. I know you know this verse, Zechariah 1:21. It's the first one memorized by nearly every kid in church. The Awana clubbers can shout it out in chorus. The reference is portrayed on banners at NFL games. Zechariah 1:21. No, none of that's true. This verse is an obscure statement in an obscure book that doesn't receive the attention given to the Gospels and the Pauline epistles and the books of Genesis and Psalms. And you know what? That's not necessarily a problem. Jesus spoke of the weightier matters of the law. It's okay to acknowledge that some parts of the Bible are more important than others. Romans 3 is more important to our Christian faith than Zechariah 1:21. Romans 3 is a weightier matter. But that's far from saying that this verse is unimportant, not worth our time. Zechariah was once very much contemporary to his listeners and readers, very much weighty, and that's actually one of the reasons that his words are more obscure to us today. He was a prophet sent by God to a very particular time in Israel's history, that of the Jewish exiles returning to Jerusalem under Darius. Zechariah prophesied alongside Haggai as these Jewish exiles rebuilt the temple half a millennium before Christ. Zechariah called the people to hope. The verse we're looking at occurs in the second of 8 visions that Zechariah has. This passage, as the new Lexham Context Commentary on the Old Testament that I helped edit puts it, is given, quote, to assure God's people that God has sufficient power to dispose of every hostile force. Zechariah sees 4 horns and 4 carpenters, and the Lord explains to him that though these horns, these other nations, had come to scatter Judah, the carpenters, or perhaps smiths or blacksmiths, will fray the horns in turn to then cast out the horns. But what does fray mean in a context like this one? I'm not making good sense of it with my English, and I checked with my wife, and she was exactly the same. So our second step, we check a responsible original language lexicon to see what the Hebrew word meant. One commentator I read summarizes the results well. This is a unique form of a rare word in the Old Testament. The Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon of the Old Testament offers startle as a glossa translation, or bring fear, or terrify. That last word is what pretty much all the modern translations go with, and it's quite similar to the marginal note that my Trinitarian Bible Society Westminster Reference Bible gives, which is frighten. God is saying that he will send these smiths to make the horns very, very afraid, and then to, in fact, cast them out. I don't know about you, but I can't be just academic and descriptive when I read this. I've been told my whole life to view the character of God toward the Israelites as indicative of his character toward me, his new covenant child. I just preached this past Sunday on Jesus' encouragement that we can ask, seek, and knock, and that we can be assured of God's welcome precisely as a father. This very door behind me gets knocked on a regular basis, and I say, "Who's there?" And I often hear a child's voice say, it's me. And I almost always say, come on in. Even if I have to shoo them out a few minutes later so I can get back to work, I let them in. My children have a purchase on me that other kids don't. God is awfully concerned throughout the Old Testament to assure his people of his love and care. He's the one who sent the 4 horns to rout Judah because of their centuries of sin. But he's so quick to promise relief, to turn on his tools of judgment and judge them in turn. This is remarkable. The character of God is on full display in the obscure second vision of an obscure prophet in a book that, let's just admit it, we don't read very often. Our third step in discovering a false friend is to find out from a contemporary English dictionary what the word can mean today. One of the 3 contemporary dictionaries I like to check gives this sense and only this sense, though all 3 give it as the primary current sense, of a fabric, rope, or cord. It means to unravel or become worn at the edge, typically through constant rubbing. Cheap fabric soon frays. As an adjective, the frayed collar of her old coat. And of course, that kind of works in Zechariah 1:21. God could be saying that the craftsmen or smiths will use their hammers to beat the horns until they're flattened and frayed at the edges. This passage could feasibly mean then that these are come to unravel them like the end of an unmelted Bible ribbon. You ever seen how that happens? It's terrible. You gotta melt them. But 2 of my contemporary dictionaries offer an archaic sense that we already know works here and is surely what the King James translators had to have intended. Scare, also to frighten away. That's Merriam-Webster. Here's the American Heritage Dictionary. To alarm, frighten, to drive away. Now, I noticed something odd and interesting, and it's why these videos of mine can never be short no matter how hard I try. The American Heritage Dictionary puts this archaic sense of fray under the noun sense you probably also know. He jumped into the fray, in other words, the fight. And it points back to Middle English fray, which brings us to our 4th step, which is to look up this word in the Oxford English Dictionary to see what it could mean in 1611. Only I'm going to go a bit further back, first by looking at the University of Michigan's Middle English Compendium. Sure enough, it links the fight sense with the frightened sense. I guess people are frightened by brawls. Perhaps that's how the sense developed, or maybe the brawls scare them away. And when I turn to the Oxford English Dictionary, I do get the same story. Fray used to mean fear. That sense of the noun, they say, is obsolete. The verb form, too, is obsolete in the sense of frighten. The OED thinks this sense, or its second sense of scare away, which fits perfectly in Zechariah 1:21 in the King James, is obsolete too, though it does hang on in poetic uses and other archaic settings. It's on the margins of the language. This sense, the frightened sense, is clear enough from context in the other 2 places where fray occurs in the King James. Deuteronomy 28:26, and thy carcass shall be meat unto all fowls of the air and unto the beasts of the earth, and no man shall fray them away. Same thing in Jeremiah 7:33. The carcasses of this people shall be meat for the fowls of the heaven and for the beasts of the earth, and none shall fray them away. But fray is a false friend in Zechariah 1:21 because this sense is, at best, poetic and rare in contemporary English. And in Zechariah 1:21, our much more common sense of the word kind of works. So I think people are going to do what they always do and understand the first sense that comes to their mind and works. Ooh, this is cool, and I got to stop and tell you for 1 second. A Fray boggard was the word used as recently as the Coverdale Bible in the 16th century to mean scarecrow. Fray meant scare, of course, and a boggard, or boggart, a word you should recognize if you've ever read Harry Potter, was a specter, a goblin, a sprite. Language is so cool. You'll be the only person on your block this Halloween to know that a scarecrow was once called a Fray boggard. In the Bible, no less. Just think of the intellectual satisfaction you will feel as you walk past other people's decorations and smile knowingly to yourself. Our little used 5th step could help us here, but I'm a busy guy. Maybe you want to do this step. Will one of my regular viewers go take a look at the noun corpus and tell me if he or she can find a single example of fray being used as a transitive verb to mean frighten or scare away? I doubt you'll find even one, unless it's quoting an older text. Here's what I think is actually going to happen when most readers today encounter fray in Zechariah 1:21 in the King James Version. They're going to know from context that fray has to mean God is doing something bad to people through these carpenters or smiths, and they're going to stop there. They're going to be satisfied. They're simply not going to connect this word to the other two obscure Old Testament passages in which the word is also used in the King James. They're not going to think of the word fear or frighten or scare away. And so here's some more static, disrupting the message as it goes from the Spirit through the tongue of an ancient prophet named Zechariah, then through the pens of long-dead translators and into your mind and heart. Here's another crack in the sidewalk that you don't notice until you stumble a little bit, but you keep on walking because it's a lot of effort to fix these little cracks. Fray in Zechariah 1:21 in the King James Version obscures the message that God has for us, a description of his character that shows his willingness and ability to frighten and then drive off the enemies of his people. I don't blame the King James. Once again, they chose a word that was absolutely appropriate for them, but a word that has come to mean something different. Hopefully now thou understandest what thou readest in the King James Version a little better.